Welcome back to another episode of The Arch Study of You. I am your host, Cameron Gilmore. I'm excited for this one for a lot of things. It's not often that you get to talk to an up and coming and inspire hip hop artist, rapper. This goes so deep into my roots on something that I grew up as a kid with, doing my own raps, doing my own dancing, doing my own singing. I mean, this is going to be so much fun. I have become a groupie. I have listened to his tracks. It is amazing. They're really good. We'll get into that. Thomas Armitage, thank you for being part of this project, being on here. Let me give you a little bit of background about Tom. He's a digital marketer. He's a fantastic digital marketer. Go follow him on LinkedIn. We'll have all his links and so forth down below. Like I said, he's a rap artist. We're going to dive into that heavily. He's an author. And he also works at Utica University. We'll get into that as well. Tom, please take 5-7 minutes. Tell us about who you are, your background, where you come from, but most importantly, give us your why.
Sure. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on here first and foremost. I love doing these type of sit downs, and a lot of the times that I'm a guest feature on these podcasts, it's strictly about marketing, which I love talking about marketing, and it's what I do, not even just 9 to 5. I'm thinking about digital marketing all the time. But it can be a little boring at times to always be talking about the same thing, right? So I like the style of your podcast where we're digging deeper and we're talking about more things on the personal side, right? It's more fun, and it allows you to see a side of somebody that is more important to them essentially than what they do between 9 and 5, and it kind of gives you more of an appreciation for their whole story. So really, really cool. So I've been really in upstate New York my entire life. So I live about halfway in between Syracuse and Albany. If I say I'm from Utica, New York, a lot of people don't know where I'm from, but they recognize Syracuse because of Syracuse University. So that kind of helps you give an indication as to where I'm at. And I've been here all my life. I have a bachelor's in public relations, master's in marketing, and I've been in digital marketing for about 15 years now. And I've done it full-time. I've done it on the side as a side hustle, freelance. I've helped my brother with some of his music projects and the promotion and marketing he's done on the music side. And I've been an adjunct professor for quite a while too, getting close to a decade. And I have some plans for kind of doing some different things as a side hustle, which we might get into in a little bit here. I have 2 children. Noelle is 7 and Desmond is 5. I am divorced, and I know we're going to talk about that a little bit as we get into a little bit more of my story. And my kids are awesome. Love my kids. And I have a T-ball game to go to as soon as we wrap up here. So Desmond's playing his 2nd year of T-ball. And it was raining all day, but it looks like the sky has at least calmed down and opened. So I think we're going to pull off this game. And it's really exciting because he's playing a lot better than his first year, which was last year when all the kids were just kind of aimlessly running around and didn't know what they were doing.
Right.
So it's been a lot of fun, and I'm a huge music buff. I love listening to all different kinds of music, especially hip hop, punk rock music from the late 90s, early 2000s. I've seen over 115 bands live at this point. I have a spreadsheet. I'm really anal about like organizing my favorite lists and things that I do. And love seeing bands live. Just saw the Lumineers about a week and a half ago. That was a lot of fun. And I'm a pretty devout Catholic, and my religious background and my Catholic faith is very, very important to me, which I know we'll probably get into a little bit more as well. So that's kind of me in a nutshell: my family, my faith, my profession, and my love for music is kind of an easy way to do a summary about me.
Oh man, look guys, if you're not already excited about this, you need to check your pulse, right? You need to go get like a Warrior energy drink or something to get you going, because this is going to be fun. I'm going to throw this little tidbit in here because you brought up the Excel spreadsheet. Here's a fun fact about Tom that you probably won't know, and he probably doesn't know that I know this. But in an interview, you once said that you don't wear the same color again, and you keep track of the brand of clothing that you wear. True or not true?
No, untrue. It must have been a typo. It was cologne. So I buy
cologne. That's it.
I wear it.
Yeah.
I wear it. So yeah, but there was a misconception when I put this out. People thought that I like sprayed a cologne on and never wore the same like squirt again, which I finish out the bottle. Like I'm not that wasteful. Like I'm not wasteful at all. Like so
Right.
I've never rebought the same bottle before. And I do keep a spreadsheet of all the different colognes that I wore. I love different colognes, love testing out different colognes. And yes, every time I buy a new cologne, I log it in my spreadsheet to make sure I don't rebuy the same brand.
I mean, come on, guys. That's fantastic. It is digital marketing at its finest. He's knowing what brands he likes and what brands he doesn't like. So let me ask you this question before we dive deep into it. Why stay in Utica? Why stay there? I know you were homeschooled growing up most of your life. Is it just, what is it about the ambience of Utica that has not allowed you to leave, or you have left but said, you know what, I always get drawn back to this place that I call home?
I have a love-hate relationship with the area. So there's a lot of things here that is cool. There's family here, familiarity. I like how it's centrally located in between. Like I can drive to a number of different places from here that it doesn't take, it's not a huge time investment to take 3 hours to go down to New York City for a Yankees game. Or I can be in the mountains in the Adirondacks, which I think is the largest mountain range in the US or the Northeast. And the Adirondacks are beautiful. Lake Placid is absolutely amazing. And that's only 2.5, 3 hours away. Lake George is constantly on the list for the nicest lakes in the country for like summer scenic tours and stuff. I can be to Philadelphia in 4 hours. I can be to Buffalo, Niagara Falls. Like I think when you grow up in an area, you take for granted sometimes like all of the wonderful attractions that are in that area. Like if I can be to New York in 3 hours that way, and one of the 7 wonders of the world 3 hours the other direction, that's really, really cool. And not a lot of people have the ability to do that. My brother just moved to Arizona. I mean, he can get to a few places, but certainly most of his driving range is desert and nothingness, right?
Yep.
So that does make upstate New York pretty cool. But it is kind of a smaller city, especially where we live here. And I've just always been envious of bigger cities that have more going on, major sports teams, music coming through every weekend. There's a major headline act. I have been pretty envious and jealous of people that live in big, thriving type of metro areas. And it probably could have been where I could have and would have considered hard and probably would have eventually moved to somewhere like Philly or Charlotte, places that I've been to that I've really, really liked. But with the divorce and the children here, this is my home and I got to be there for them. So it's at least out of the cards for a while until they become adults or the situation changes when they get older.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love understanding the roots, understanding your roots and not taking it for granted. I mean, I'm an Arizona boy. I mean, I don't know why your brother moved to Arizona. It's hot and hot. So I can say that
because the other day and he said it was 106 degrees.
Yeah,
like,
no.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, just wait. It's June. Wait till July, August hits when it's 120. Yeah, have fun with that,
Holy cow.
With growing up with all of that, all of that scenery and places to go and things to do, what were 1 or 2 principles that were instilled in you from your parents? Because look, you were homeschooled, which the stigma, and I'll be, we'll just put it out there, the stigma of homeschooled kids, for especially, I mean, you're probably mid-30s, right? 34. Hey, you're 10 years younger than me. Crazy. That time growing up, the stigma was if you were homeschooled, you were, weird, and you didn't have a social life. How could you connect with other people? So give us, 1 or 2 principles that you were taught at an early age that you have seen blossom now at a young, tender 34-year-old man.
Mm-hmm. I was homeschooled only 1 year, went to Catholic school growing up, was homeschooled, and then went to public school, then went to a private college and a public college. So I feel like I've had a pretty diverse understanding and view of all the different styles of teaching, I guess, by the time you add all five of those up together. There definitely used to be a heavy stigma around homeschooling. And even when we went into the public school after being homeschooled, you said you were homeschooled, and there definitely was a connotation to that, right? I think that's changed, especially with COVID, when a lot of people pulled their kids out. And depending on your political views, a lot of the public schools may not fit the agenda and what you want to be seeing your kids be learning. So a lot of people are pulling their kids out of public schools for that reason too. So I think that stigma has waned. I think that a lot of people are even embracing it and celebrating being homeschooled. But you're right, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, it was definitely there. But at the time, it made a lot of sense. We very Catholic faith-based family, and we did a homeschooling school. Essentially, they're the ones that provide the curriculum, provide the books and the textbooks and the teaching guides. That was very connected and centralized around the Catholic faith. So it was an interesting experience. It was the curriculum was tough, but I'm such a organized, structured, efficient type of person that I would get done with school, even though it was kind of a lot of work that I felt like I needed to do. I'd still get done at like 11, 12 o'clock, and I'd be outside shooting hoops. And I knew that my friends still had another 3 hours worth of class, 3-4 hours worth of class. So that was kind of fun. But also what we had learned after the fact is my mom, because she had never done homeschooling before, and she was kind of our teacher, she was really rigid, and she needed to like check all the boxes. I did all this. We've talked to other people that have homeschooled over the years. They're like, we're not that structured. Like, as long as they got it done, as long as I felt like they were learning it, then it was cool. And I'm like, Mom, why'd you take it so seriously? I could have been done at like 9 o'clock, let alone 11 o'clock. So
man.
I think that you got to make sure you're getting the work done. You got to make sure that the education is there. But when it's one-to-one learning, you cannot tell me that if my mom is sitting there teaching me that we can't pack more in a 2-hour period than a class of 40 kids when 37 of them are distracted and pulling the rest of the class down. Like you can be so efficient with that learning when it's just one-to-one. It's crazy.
Yeah. So what was that transition like then from homeschool to Catholic school? I mean, that had to be like you hit on it. One-to-one learning. You're right. I mean, a parent to their child, one to learn. You can accomplish so much more on that individual level. Then you go from that to a Catholic, which take us into that space. What was that transition? Not only just the homeschool life, but I'm sure there were rules and regulations you had to follow into it. I asked because I don't know, and I'm very, very curious.
Yeah. No. So it was flip flop. So it's the other way. I went Catholic homeschool or Catholic school, homeschool, and then in public school. So whatever you just said, it's going to be an even more severe transition, right? Thankfully, the public school wasn't that large. So we graduated maybe 130, which is pretty small, especially compared to like big cities where they're graduating 600, 700, 800 in a class. So 130 is on the smaller side, even for upstate New York. But I tell you what was really helpful. I was pretty nervous around that time with going to meet new friends and going to a new school, as anyone would. And that was 7th grade, which is probably the worst time to be meeting new friends and entering into a new school. But what really, really helped is I played baseball for the spring season before. So because I was homeschooled, we had the luxury of moving during the school year without having to yank me out mid-year. And I played Little League that year, that spring, and then even into the summer, into All-Stars. And I did this camp down in Cooperstown. Forgot to mention Cooperstown is also only 45 minutes away from here, which is pretty cool. And that was really, really helpful because I knew a good 20 guys going into school that September. And that made all the difference. Like I would have been so scared walking in on that first day without knowing anyone. Knowing I had 20 friends already heading in on September 1st it meant everything. Like that was really, really helpful that I had played baseball that summer and that spring.
Dude, that's awesome. I love that. I love that concept of getting out of the shell, knowing you're going to do something hard for the first time as a kid, as a 7th grade. Anybody who I have teenagers now that have gone through the 7th grade. And let me tell you, that is a horrific transition for kids, because you go from 6th to 7th. Not only that, but your emotions and your hormones and all of that comes into play. And you're like, Holy, boys think a lot more at that age because of they're going through those changes. And you're like, man, that's insane. So when did sixth grade, the rhyming, the lyrical stuff, the writing hip hop, how did this get injected into you? Was it something you loved and just wanted to do? Was it an outward expression? Was it a way to get what was up in here out on paper? I mean, take us through that process of why start writing rhymes and then why start, hip hop in general.
Yeah, I think there was a couple things that were going on at the time. I didn't have any like trauma as a child, so it wasn't like it was an escape from any like severe difficulties, normal challenges. But I had two older siblings. My brother Dave is probably exactly your age because he's 10 years older than me. So he was into hip hop music, and he was probably listening to the same exact stuff you were if you're the same age. And my sister Cary also listened to some hip hop at the time too. So it was, you emulate your older siblings. So it was cool to hear what they were listening to. And I remember they used to give me cassette singles, and that was really cool to be able to be like, hey, check out this cassette single. And that was kind of my first introduction. The Fuji La with the B-side Ready or Not was the first cassette that I owned. Cary gave that to me. So that was 1996. And that's still my favorite year in music and in hip hop because of everything that came out that year. And because I had just having an attraction, an affiliation to 1996, because that was the year I got introduced to hip hop. So that was when I first started to be exposed to it. Right. And my brother Joe and I used to listen to the radio all the time, especially on Saturday mornings when they had like the top 40. And I found that, so the main hit station, which at the time I think was whatever it was locally here, 102.5 maybe, and they would play like the top 40. But then I stumbled across this other one, 97.9, that was Wow FM, and they would play the urban tracks. They had their own urban top 40, and I was like, wait, what are all these songs? Like these weren't on Rick D's top 40 right. from yesterday. I think it was like Sunday at noon. So we'd listen to the Saturday one at 8:00 and go like 8 to 12. And then I stumbled on this rhythm and urban one on Sunday at noon. And that was only a couple hours. I'm like, dude, there's all sorts of music here that I haven't listened to on the other one. So that's when I was like, okay, this is pretty cool stuff. And I've always been also, I think there was an allure to urban and to hip hop because other people weren't listening to it, at least my age and in our community. So I've always been kind of attracted to like things that weren't mainstream and weren't cool. Like that's why I like the Cowboys, even though I live up in upstate New York, and I follow different artists that are underground compared to other people. So I think there was a cool factor to hip hop. Yeah, really at the time, right? It wasn't mainstream. It wasn't popular music. It needed time to break through, but there was a cool factor to listening to stuff that nobody else knew about really. And then, a couple of years later, 98, 99, Jay-Z Volume 2 came out, and that I was like, this is just awesome. He's my favorite artist at the time, and that was my favorite album at the time. So there was just a really big appeal. And then, I started just write some rhymes down, and I think it was more about the creativity. Like, it was a challenge for me to piece words together and make them sound cool, make them rhyme, make it story tell in a way that you wouldn't do in just everyday life. And even in just like poetry, I felt like it's a form of poetry, obviously, but there was just something about it because I appreciated the music, and it was cool that I could take part in it. And, for years, I just used to doodle and write rhymes in the margins of my notebooks. But if I dug out my high school notebooks, you just had rhymes in every single one of the margins. I remember my global studies class, it was like so boring. I liked US history. I hated global studies. And like every margin, it was just like random rhymes or whatever I was thinking about at the time. So I think it's more just about the creativity that goes into it more than anything.
Oh man, I love that. I love that the challenge aspect, right? Because you'll see later on in this conversation how hip hop, this ability to be creative with lyrically from the words and how to combine certain things to draw people in. You will see later on how it is helping and currently helping Tom become a phenomenal digital marketer. And that's really what it is, right? It's telling a story to captivate an audience. And at an early age doing that, you're going to see, guys, later on in this conversation, we're going to get more into that, which is going to be fantastic. So I want to stay on this because your brother actually, so he's all in, right? We were having a conversation. I watched a news production on him about just going all in. So how is him going all in and now being a producer helping you kind of continue to grow your love and your passion, the childhood passion, as continuing to having fun with being a hip hop artist?
Eric's my little brother. He is so good. If you like my stuff, his stuff is 10 times better. Like the amount of work he puts into his storytelling, no wasted lines, no wasted words, everything making sense, the way he connects his words together, the amount of finesse in what he does on the post-production side to make it sound just the highest quality possible. I mean, I really wish that there's somebody listening or somebody that hears his stuff that can help promote him, because he's awesome. He is absolutely awesome. So he learned all this himself, right? He credits me with getting him involved in hip hop, because I used to have instrumentals and I gave them to him. That was really when he started writing. So that's really, really cool that he looks up to me that way. But he took it seriously. He bought equipment, then he bought better equipment, then he bought better equipment, learned so much stuff just from watching YouTube videos on how to use the different post-production modules and filters and editing techniques and mixing and mastering. And all this stuff was just learned on the fly. And of course, they say that quantity breeds quality, right? And I believe that with LinkedIn and content marketing, everything we do in marketing, quantity breeds quality. And if you listen to his stuff and you're like, I wonder why he's so much better than the local rapper that I saw perform on Friday night, it's because he writes a verse every day. I mean, he's writing and thinking about lyrics so often that by the time that he finishes the song, he's thrown out 20 to get to that 21st that sounds really, really good. And you hear that with any artist that's like super, super good. They used to say that Eminem threw out like 90 verses before he gave Dre the Medicine Man verse, which is why it's one of what I consider one of his greatest verses. Quantity breeds quality, and he's gotten so much better because he's put so much into the craft, and it's really cool to see. So he's got really great equipment. He puts a lot of time into it. He's learned so much, and he's gotten into the video production as well. He lives in Raleigh now. He still makes music, and he's doing like video production work for DJs and artists down in Raleigh. And he's only been down there a year, so he's still trying to network and meet new people, but it's really, really cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, we'll have, look, I've listened to his stuff as well, your stuff. It's fun. I mean, it's great. Give us listeners, give people that are listening to this one or two principles that can help people not give up on some of those passions and those loves that they have. You have a passion for writing. You can tell it comes across in the music, in the videos. You can tell there's a passion. And we have this conversation, but you go watch your videos, you can tell there's a genuine love and a genuine passion for what it is that you do when you're out creating hip hop music, creating the storytelling. So please give us one or two principles that you would share with people on not giving up on something you love.
I think the first is probably to make time for it. We live in such a busy world that it's really, really easy to fill up your day. And many of those things are probably important and needed, but there's absolutely things involved in everyone's day that are unneeded and unimportant. And if you can shave off, watching Netflix every night or scrolling through TikTok for an hour before bed, everyone has wasted time in their day. And if you can sacrifice giving up that wasted time, you can make room and make way for hobbies or more important activities to better yourself and to get more fulfillment and enjoyment out of your day. So I think that's the first. And the second is, I think, testing and figuring out what you love. I think some people may not have found what they love because they haven't tested out a lot of different things. Try some instruments, take dance lessons, go to your local BOCES or trade school and classes. I mean, there's if you open up your eyes, there's different ways on a limited budget you can test out some of these hobbies, and you need to figure out what it is that you like. Maybe do those in reverse order, figure out what you like, and then make time for putting time and effort into it. But I think those are probably the two rules that I would say, because a lot of people just, they wake up, they go to work, they come home, and then they just start watching Netflix. And it's like, how are you going to do anything that's meaningful? And you wonder why you have no fulfillment in your daily life, but you're not putting in the effort to make time for what you actually do love.
Oh man, I love that last point. I love that last point. Say that again, because I'm slow. I mean, this is how it is. Say that again about fulfillment and making time. Make that principle again. That is so powerful.
You have to make time for what you love to do. And there's so much wasted time in your day. You have to cut out the crap, cut out the clutter, understand and know what it is that's going to bring you the most joy, the most fulfillment, and commit to it and make time for it.
Oh, guys. Woo. This is the part of the show you just rip off your shirt and scream. Super. I say this all the time, but this truly is the time where you just rip it off and go, that's it. You make the time for the passions that you have and you build it. Like Tom says, I mean, the quantity will come, the quality will come with the quantity. You have to put in the time. You can't just be like, oh, I want to get on my bike and I want to ride 10 miles. If you've never been on a bike before, yeah, you're hitting 2, the next day your legs are done. You can't move. It's the quantity that you're putting into something that you love will produce the quality of it that will benefit millions. And whether you become, famous hip hop artists or whatnot, the fact that you're actually being a beacon of light to people to say, look, yeah, he's a busy man. We'll get into busyness of you, but you prioritize your time so well that, this is what I'm going to consume now. I'm going to stop consuming this because it benefits me in no other way. Now, I'm not saying it's not bad just to sit down and say, I want to go brain dead. I'm going to watch something 90 minutes. That's fine. Decompress. What Tom's saying is you have to systematize yourself on what is important and what is not important. Man, that's freaking good.
But at the same time, if you want to be brain dead for 90 minutes every night and then be jealous of the next guy because he has a successful venture, a successful side hustle, he's mastered an instrument, he's done something that you're deeming as more successful than you, then you only can blame yourself. You only can blame yourself. 100%
on that. Oh, fantastic point. That was good. That was really good, man. That was really freaking good.
Sound bite. Cut that one out.
Sound bite. Cut that. Yeah, that was awesome. Holy crap, that was so good. All right, so I want to transition now. We're gonna touch on this a little delicately because it is a part of your life that I feel like, and this is how Thomas and I got connected, was because of this post. We both have been divorced, right? Mine was 2 years going back and forth, and Tom he'll tell his story, but we don't care about the details and the who's and the what's and the whys, but just help us understand a little bit. Take us into that part when you just knew, it's time to go. Like it's time to just separate. It's time to part because you're not happy and I'm not happy. Mentally, I can't do this anymore. We all hit that point. And I can say that because I have been there. Mentally, you're at a point, emotionally, you're like, I can't do this anymore. I have to change because I'm dying inside. So take us to that point when you were there and just said, I have to do it. And what were the steps? Not, I don't care about the legalities, but just what were the steps that you did when you said, now I'm going to do it. And then what are the steps that help you build yourself to who you are now?
Yeah, I think that the breaking point was really when anyone realizes that it's not getting better, right? When you're trying to think through and you're praying about it and you're trying to figure out if this can work. And when there's no forward progress, you eventually get to that point where like, okay, I think we got to make a change here. And my next step, the kids was really what made this so heart-wrenching, right? So difficult. And you said you had 4, so you understand what's going on here. And my kids were young, and I assume that you probably had at least a couple that were pretty young, right? Mm-hmm. So Noelle at the time must have been 4 and Desmond 2, maybe 3.5 and 1.5. So this was brutal. brutal, and it was difficult to like forecast and try to figure out like how this is going to affect them, and that weighed on me so heavily, and it still weighs on me heavily. But thankfully, thank God, the my little brother who does the music with me, he had an apartment that I was able to kind of crash in while the dust kind of settled from a legal standpoint, and that was only about a mile away from our house. And that was really big because first off, it was a house that the apartment was a house that my dad and I owned, so there was familiarity there, which is any sort of familiarity during a time period like that is helpful, as you can imagine, and firsthand. Being with my brother was so helpful, and being only a mile from the kids if they needed me or for drop-offs, and to be able to continue to spend time with them. If it was further away, if it was in a new house, a new environment, it would have made things so much more difficult than it already was. So I was blessed. Yeah, I didn't feel it at the time, but I was blessed with a few of these small gifts from God that helped kind of ease the pain throughout that process. And then, just kind of have to keep looking at the next day and keep moving forward. And then eventually, the legalities kind of all went through, and then started having, official time with the children each week and having them at the apartment, and kind of went from there.
Yeah. Look, guys, we're going to get into this because, look, you may not believe in God, or you do believe in God, or you believe in a higher power, or whatever it is. So just stay with us, because this is an important part of, Tom's life. So how did your faith, how did your reliance on God, family, and the community around you, how did that help pull you out? Because going from when you're basically removed from a situation and you have to go, like you said, you crashed at your brother's apartment, which is a mile away, there are lonely nights. I'm gonna tell you this, there are lonely nights. There are times that you have your kids' clothes, and all you do is smell your kids' clothes at night, because that's all, you can't do anything else but that. And your brain is like, if only I can just smell their clothes, that's be fine. Or you hit record on your phone and you can hear their voice and you go, if I can listen to it at night, then I won't go nuts. So how did your faith help pull you out and keep you for a good part level-headed during this process? And then how has it built you up to where you are today?
Yeah. It's so helpful to be able to have a conversation with somebody that's been through it, right? And that's why you bring on people like me, where you can kind of understand each other, because these things you're saying, I mean, that's exactly what you're doing. You're just absolutely going ballistic in your mind, and there's nothing you can do. So you just grasp for anything that's going to kind of make you feel better. So I talked to a couple priests locally, one at my parish at St. Mary's, and then another at Holy Trinity, my mom's parish. And Father John, he counseled me a bit, and he gave me a rosary that I started carrying in my pocket every day. And that was really helpful. If you're Catholic, the rosaries are important. They're an important prayer, asking the Blessed Mother to intercede for you as you're praying. And when I was like having such a difficult time in my mind, I'd just reach in my pocket, because my hands are always going in my pocket to grab my phone, right? And when you'd reach in to grab your phone and you just feel the beads on that rosary, like that provided, I can't even describe to you the level of comfort that provided, as a constant reminder, it being in my pocket when my hand is just going all day, to grab my phone or put my hands in my pocket. And that was there. That was really, really helpful. I read a couple books. One was The Imitation of Christ, which got recommended to me by my parish priest, Father Art. That's like from the 1400s, a classic book in the Catholic community. Difficult to read because the writing of it is so old and ancient that it was like, he even said, he's like, read like a paragraph at a time. Don't try to like read this like a novel. So you'd read a page or a couple of paragraphs and you just kind of meditate and think on it. And that was helpful. I also read this book on suffering. I can't remember the full name of it. The Meaning of Suffering, something like that. And I should honestly reread that, because I'm going to have a different perspective now than I did when I was in it. And when you're in it, you're like, dude, I don't want to be suffering right now. This is, what do you mean the meaning of suffering? Like some of the chapters, some of the sections is like, embrace it, right? Suffering is good. It's good for your soul. And I'm like, well, I don't want this. Don't give this to me. But I think I should probably reread that now and have an appreciation of what, I went through and what any of us go through that's difficult. And I probably look at it from a different perspective. So, and I was praying the rosary every night as well. So, a combination of these things definitely ease the pain a bit, not entirely, but ease the pain a bit. And yeah, my faith has always been important, but I just clutched onto it for dear life during those couple of years.
You said something that it sparked something in my head. God doesn't call the qualified; He qualifies the call. And it's a huge, huge, huge. And you're right. When you're in that moment, right? When you're in the dark abyss, and people are telling you, "Look, you can get through this." You're like, "I want it to just end. Like I want it to end. Like I don't care. I don't care about the blessings that will come from this in the future. I don't care about." What this will do and help me build. I don't care about that.
Yeah.
I want it to end.
Yeah.
End my suffering, please.
Yeah.
I love how you held fast and firm to the faith. And a lot of people, it just, look, we all go through our own experiences. So how has that experience, relying on your faith, relying on other people around you, how has that transitioned you to the man you are today? Because we see the 5%, right? We see for the 5% of what we see now of Tom. He's flourishing, he's doing great. What we don't see is the 95% of all the crap that you had to go through. So now when you look back, because you said this, how would you look at that, the suffering differently? How would you take those principles that you learned in that book? How do you see them differently now with the lenses that you have?
I don't even know if I can clearly articulate it just yet. And maybe that's a reason in and of itself to reread the book, right? So I can actually put my finger on the lessons that it taught me. But regardless, I know that it taught me some sort of lessons, right? Whether it's more of an understanding and empathy for others that have been through divorce, single moms and single dads, more empathy for those, and an understanding, a willingness to help them out. A couple of the LinkedIn posts that I've done like that, I haven't done too many, right? It's hard to be vulnerable like that, but you reached out to me, right? I must have touched somebody. You reached out to me. I've gotten a couple other notes when I've done those that just says, hey, this meant a lot to me to read that somebody else is going through it. As a matter of fact, the first one I did, I've only probably done 3 or 4 that was specifically like on the divorce and single fatherhood and the challenges. A girl from high school, I haven't talked to her in 18 years, 17 years. She reached out to me through DM. So I must have been connected to her. Didn't even know I was connected to her. And she said, I'm going through this right now. And this was really helpful to read this. That alone, maybe that alone is worth the going through the suffering to be able to positively impact a handful of people. I don't know just yet. I guess I'll know when I get to heaven. Fingers crossed I do. That what good came about from a bad situation.
Oh man, that's freaking awesome. No, seriously, that is so powerful that you can open up. You guys, look, if you're listening to this on any other streaming service, besides, YouTube right now, go back and listen to this part in YouTube, because what you will see as Tom starts talking about it, he kind of gets a little somber, but then when he looks at the blessing, you can see him a light, his eyes open up a little bit more. His posture becomes a little bit more. It's because now he can talk to a position of strength. He can talk and say, I can tell somebody it sucks 100%. Just stay with it. If you stay with it, it will get better. It may not be today, tomorrow, a year from now too, but it will get better. And if you need a shoulder, if you need a vocal, dude, reach out. And that's what Tom did. You reach out to people, you listen to what they say. You may not agree with it at the time, but you listen to it because you are saying, I'm broken, I need help, but I don't want to give up, because you couldn't give up because you had 2 beautiful kids that relied on you as their dad. So let me ask you this question. How has your relationship now with your Noel and Desmond, they're older now, How is your relationship been more solidified because you never gave up, because you didn't listen to those internal probably promptings of like, I'm just going to go end this right now and create mayhem? How is that relationship now with them as opposed to what it could have been if you had followed those negative promptings?
Yeah, I think we're very close. I don't know if I can't necessarily say that we wouldn't have been as close if we were an intact family, because I would have wanted to be as close as we are now. But I think that it certainly has prompted me and forced me to play a little bit of a different role. Maybe I would just be the traditional father that came home after work and we'd eat dinner together, and I'd read him a couple stories and tuck them in at night. And now I'm doing everything, right. I'm doing their laundry. I'm doing their dishes. I'm doing both traditional mother and traditional father duties. So hopefully they're seeing that, they're respecting the grind that I put in as a father, and the grind that I'm sure their mother puts in to play kind of both parts when they're with her. And hopefully they'll grow up having a deep respect for us and what we've done to try to continue to love them, even despite the divorce and the situation.
Oh, power, man. That we could stop right now, literally could stop this conversation right now, because this part, I mean, the whole thing's going to touch people, but what you just said, this part of the conversation, when it hits all over the world, people will get it, and they'll say thank you. And that's what I've heard a lot, with sharing. It's hard to even share my experience with a lot of people because it's still very raw. It still hits a nerve, even though it's past. And when people tell me this all the time, oh yeah, we had an amicable divorce, we had an amicable separation. I'm like, there's no such thing as an amicable divorce. Yeah. There is not. Because you have time, energy, and a vested interest into that relationship. And when it's gone, then you have to figure out how to rebuild. So my question to you now is, what are you doing? Give us 2 to 3 actionable steps for anyone, right? Who is or has gone through what we've gone through. 2 to 3 actionable steps you would say, listen, here's what I did to help keep me out of the dark or to pull me out. And here's what I'm continuing to do to keep my mind right.
Sure. Yeah. I'd say if you're religious, definitely clutch onto your faith. I think it's going to be a real source of comfort. There's lots of books, both religious and non-religious, that can probably provide some comfort as well, and some teaching moments and some tips. I did a support group at the time. I was the youngest one. I kind of felt a little embarrassed being there, being what I felt. People were like, well, this kid is only married, 5.5, 6 years. What's he doing here? There's people there that were 40, 50, 60 years old that were married for 30 years. And I kind of felt like, I felt sometimes like my pain didn't equate theirs. Like their pain should be greater because they were married longer. And that certainly wasn't the case. They were all very welcoming. It was put on by a Catholic organization, but it was open to all faiths. So there certainly wasn't all Catholics in the room. And that was really helpful. That was really helpful at the time. So I would certainly advise folks going through it to attend a support group if you can. Build a network of those around you that can support you, whether that's family or friends or other people that have been through it. And kind of a really popular rule when you're going through divorce is to not jump into another relationship. And I would definitely recommend that one as a tip. Because I was Catholic, because I was a devout Catholic, I needed to go through the annulment process. If you're a Catholic, you're probably a little bit familiar with it, even if you haven't been through it, but it's a very thorough process, and extensive documents that you need to fill out of your childhood, your soon to be ex-spouses or ex-spouses childhood, your relationship, your dating relationship, some about the marriage itself. A lot goes into it. Then they have to interview, the Catholic Church has to interview you. And obviously, in the eyes of the Catholic Church, you're still married until that annulment goes through. So I didn't date. I didn't enter into any relationships during that time, and I'm really thankful for that, because I can guarantee you it would have been an absolute disaster if I started dating in that mental space that I was in, because it was not good, and it would have been very bad relationships, and I would have treated a girl probably very poorly during that time. but it's so difficult because you want to be with somebody because you're in such pain. So you're like, this is so hard because I want to be with somebody that, you know, I can't be with my spouse, or I'm not supposed to be with my spouse anymore. And I want to be with somebody, but I can't right now. It's just absolute mayhem and chaos in your head. But I'm really, really grateful that I stuck to my guns and stuck to kind of the rules of the church, and didn't begin a relationship during that time. And I waited for the annulment to go through. And that was really helpful because, like, anyone that's been through it, they say to do this. And a lot of people from experience have said that they had really bad relationships during that time because they hadn't fully recovered yet. And it's nearly impossible to begin a relationship. It probably is impossible to begin a healthy, successful relationship when you're in that state. So you have to avoid it as hard as it is.
Dang it, man. That's so freaking good.